Good morning, everyone. This is Patrick Brown from Mckay. We're going to get started in just a moment. We'll wait here for our president, Bob Stee, to also get on and wait for a couple other people to join the call. If you wouldn't mind at this time just putting your name and your program information in the chat. It's always great to see who's on the call today. So happy to have everybody on. We'll get started in just a moment. Alrighty, good morning, everybody. And I'm going to ask everyone just to mute themselves. I have also tried to mute everyone. That will just help with any background noise that we have, little children, dogs, those kinds of things.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey, good morning, Bob. So we have Bob Stee on the call, and we've asked everyone just to, in the chat, if you can write your name and your program just so that we can see. It looks like we've got a great number of people coming in.
And
I think
during the
whatever you like, Bob.
During the PowerPoint, we will attempt to answer any questions that or any comments in the chat that we need to. But you need to remember that we don't have all the answers. We're just here to connect with you as members of Mckay and to hopefully answer some of those questions that you may have, but and hopefully if we don't have an answer, to try to find the answer. So we want to welcome all of you. I think we have over 100 that are going to participate today, which is awesome. And I just wanted to take a minute just to thank Patrick for organizing this second check-in that we're having. So thank you, Patrick. Patrick has worked very hard during this pandemic to connect with all of us and to keep us focused on what we need to do as program providers during this pandemic. So thank you, Patrick. Also, I'd like to take a minute to thank Erica Luce. Erica Luce, for one, has met with Patrick and I weekly to just give us any updates that are coming from the State Office of Adult Ed. And so we really appreciate her time and being able to commit to us. And also, I believe Erica, are you on the call today?
Yeah, thanks, Bob.
All right. So really, we want to thank Erica for joining us today and helping to participate in this check-in. So hopefully it'll be productive for all of you as members. So we appreciate Erica and her commitment to communicating with all of our members. Just remember to use the chat, and then Patrick will walk us through the agenda, and he will also at the end, if there's any other questions that we haven't addressed, we'll try to answer those. We'll keep this to 1 hour. And depending on this one, we will look again to offer another check-in in a week or a week and a half's time. So thank you. Don't forget also this Friday, we have our committee meetings that we're going to attempt. Each committee chair is going to attempt to run a Zoom meeting for their committee, which would start at 1 o'clock. And so those committees are ABE and Literacy with Heather Holland, Advocacy with Ugi Lamar, Alternative Ed with Shelley Hansen, High School Equivalency and High School Completion with Renee Gowan, Community Ed is with me, and Workforce Development is with Karen Govan. So if you haven't attended committee meetings, but you still want to participate, you can still do that. Patrick, they could probably email you and you could let them know the call-in number for that committee, right?
Yep, just have them, just send me an email, McKay Outreach, and we can get you connected.
Right. So
I have a
that'd be
question
great.
about that. Hi, this is Yara from Cassopolis. I have a question. I would like to attend to see the process, and I was asked which committee I would like to be joined. Is there any, is there, I mean, I don't belong to any of the committees. Should I just like send you an email back with my preference, or does it matter, or how do we do that?
You could just whatever one you would like to participate in, you can email that to Patrick, and Patrick will send you the information for that committee and when they're gonna, all the committee meetings plan to start at 1 o'clock on Friday.
Okay, I got you. I thought that all of them were going to be together, you know, discussing each one of their areas. So they're going to be separate entities.
Each one's going to be separate, a separate Zoom meeting, correct?
All right, thank you. Thank you for clarifying.
Okay, you're welcome.
All right, should we get started, Bob?
We should get started.
All right. Well, thanks everybody for being on, and thanks Bob for helping to put all of this together. We really had a great turnout the last meeting that we had, and so we thought that this might be very helpful for people to get more information and to share and talk about some of the pressing concerns and issues that we've heard, and to address any questions that you have as well. We wanted to start just with the McKay update of some things that we've done. We've tried to be very proactive on your behalf in a couple of different ways. And one of those is we have a dedicated space on our website for resources. We hope that you'll visit that and you'll go to that and find information there that will be helpful for you. We also have expanded our professional development opportunities. We've transitioned all of those very seamlessly, very timelessly as well to virtual learning formats. And so you can find all of that information. You can register for them all the way up through the end of the program year at our website as well. So we want to thank Judy, our McKay secretary, for helping us to get and pull all of that together. And then we're still continuing to gather resources as we can. We've heard a lot of best practices and things that people are doing across the state just to get through this time. And then we've also, like Bob said, been working really closely with the State Adult Education Office to offer our suggestions and our recommendations on your behalf and to highlight any concerns that we've heard that you have had. So really trying to do our part to represent you in different capacities. I wanted to start by giving you a couple of updates from different departments that are directly linked to us here in adult education and alternative education and community education as well. From the Office of the Governor, there are two resources that I think might be very helpful for you, and if you have time to peruse, might be something that you want to do. One is an FAQ that they released regarding face-to-face instruction for the rest of the 1920 program year, especially if you're in an alternative education setting. That would be something that you want to take a look at as it pertains to the MME requirements and graduation requirements, especially for seniors. It does specifically, it's very clear. In some questions it says yes, it says no, and it's very direct. And so I think that will be helpful for you and for all of our programs to take a look at as well. The Office of the Governor, as you know, has extended the stay home, stay safe through April 30th. And so we know that that has a direct impact on all of you and your programming. And we know that at this time it's a challenge to transition to distance learning. So hopefully today we can share what some people are doing that's been very successful that they have found. I think the key thing that Bob said is, flexibility, determination, patience. I think all of those attributes and skill sets are attributes that you need to work in adult education in general, but especially now they've come to the forefront, and I think are very evident that we need to have those. I also wanted to share you know, as Bob and I have been talking, and as we've been talking with the State Adult Education Office and talking with different programs, certainly the emotional and social well-being of our participants, our students, and you as staff and program providers is paramount and very important. And so we definitely want to keep that at the forefront of all the decision-making that happens, all of the discussions that happen. And so there is the Department of Education has created an educator guide to emotional and social needs of students. It's chock full of information. I think it might be really helpful just to go over yourself if you're a program director, or if you are a, you know, if you have a staff that you'd like to share that with. I think it's really important to keep all of that in perspective as things are really changing and we're in uncertain times. I think resources like that can help to bring some more stability.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, go ahead, Bob.
Just to reinforce that this PowerPoint will be available, correct? And people will be able to have the links to all the different resources that Patrick has put up there. And also, Oogie had wanted to make sure that we emphasize, you know, that the info about our committees can be found on our website, mckay.org. And so you can take a look at that if you're interested in those and read about those committees as well. They'll be available on our website. So.
Yes, great. Thank you. That's, I forgot that we had done that. So that's great. Thank you for sharing, Oogie. Yeah. Wow, we were proactive. And finally, the last resource that I wanted to share from the Department of Ed, and this is actually from the Office of the Governor, and I've had a lot of discussions with particularly ESL programs that have shared concerns about how do we get this information out to our participants and their communities, especially if English is not their primary language. And so they have created some multilingual fact sheets around the coronavirus. I believe it's in Spanish, Arabic. I believe there's also Mandarin. I didn't look that extensively at all that there were, but I would refer you to that. I just think it's a great resource to share out as we're trying to emphasize the importance of this and all move together in this and share that with your participants or your staff or whoever you think might benefit from that information. A couple of updates from the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity. As you may well be aware, just from media sources and general knowledge, the Unemployment Insurance Agency has a large volume of calls. In fact, they're polling staff members from other Michigan Works agencies. I know that some of our member program Michigan Works agencies have had to shift some priorities and shift staffing to help make some of those solutions and to really fill that void there and the volume that they're getting. If you watched the governor's press conference, I believe it was on Monday, a couple of days ago, Jeff Donofrio, the director of the Department of Labor and Economic Opportunity, was there, and he shared that nearly 1 million Michiganders have filed for unemployment during this time, and that it's ticking up to about 25% of the working population. And so we know that the impact here is real. We know that it's very evident and apparent. And they have expanded hours in their staffing. And I think that's important as you talk with your participants and you talk with them about some of the options that they have. It's important to stress that they have certain days for when they're able to call based on last name and priority. They would refer most everyone to do it online. We know that's a challenge for those that don't have technology or maybe do not speak English, but that's where they're really referring everyone to the online system. So I would take some time to look at that and get that information out that you can to those participants that you know might need it. In addition, particularly, I know I've talked to some program people that this directly impacts themselves, but particularly for our participants, the Secretary of State has waived the expirations of driver's license and vehicle registrations that were set to expire from now until June 30th. And that was done obviously because we're in this shelter-in-place mode right now, and many citizens were very concerned about that. How do they go about that? And so the governor's office has really been making a lot of adjustments to accommodate some of those things. And we know that that is really important for our participants as well. But something that they might not be aware of, it may not have heard, there's so much information out there that's shuffling through. But those are really two priorities that I thought we wanted to share. Moving now more into talking specifically about our adult education. We shared this information last time, and it's continues to be discussed at the regional fiscal agent level as well as at the program level in different regional meetings. This is just a reminder of the upcoming financial deadlines for Section 107 and WIOA. It is hard to believe that, you know, we still have work to do as we plan for the future when we're in a crisis like this, but it's very important to be aware of these deadlines and to know that they are real. And that's something that, you know, we can happily help you with. We have a professional development today around walking through the WIOA application at McKay. So we're helping members to get that to the finish line. But we would always encourage you to reach out if you're a Section 107 provider to your regional fiscal agent if you have specific questions, and obviously the State Adult Education Office itself if you have specific questions about these things. I should say, and I know Bob has said it, if you have questions, and I know that we've been monitoring it throughout, and Bob is, and I will be doing that. If you have specific questions throughout the morning, please put those into the chat box and we can address those as we go along.
Yeah, they're kind of quiet today.
Yeah, I think everyone's waking up, enjoying their morning cup of coffee. All right, so the big pressing questions, I think, and I should put out a caveat here that, and Bob echoed it, we don't know all the answers right now. And I say that we meaning McKay, we meaning the State Adult Education Office, we meaning the Federal Adult Education Office. This is a new reality for the time being that we are trying to find common sense solutions to, but that are valid, that are ethical, that are equitable. And so it's going to be like that for a while. And I think we at the program level want to have direct answers and support. And in some cases, we're going to be getting that very soon, and it's going to be very apparent and clear for us. And in other areas, that's going to be a very fluid response or very fluid action that we need to take. So I wanted to share a couple of things that I think you'll find useful. One is that the Office of Career and Technical Education on March 27th released some preliminary guidance. I think it was about 7 or 8 questions, and our board met and we reviewed some of those questions. There is a link here on this website and you'll be able to access that and read that yourself. But broadly, and Bob, you can definitely speak to this as well, but broadly the guidance was an overview and left a lot of determination to each state on specific policies. And some of the questions were around obviously post-testing, funding, performance metrics and measures, but really a lot of it left a lot to each state to local control to kind of determine what works best for that state. And so our State Adult Education Office has really been working to work through that, to dissect that, what does that mean, and how that impacts our state. And broadly, each state through that FAQ really was tasked with examining what practices and policies are in place and whether or not there need to be changes, whether their programming can continue in the same way, if there need to be adjustments in how we do things, particularly around funding. And then if there's anything that needs to be adjusted or changed through the program year, what does that look like through guidance and policies? And how can our state office communicate that out with all of our program members in an equitable way? And so that's an ongoing task. Our State Adult Education Office is working to release an updated FAQ. They do have one currently on the website, but they're working to release a new one that particularly addresses some of these issues. I will say, and Erica, you can speak to this as well, that I think maybe the answers that we're looking for, we might not find verbatim what we're looking for in the answers to those questions, because a lot of those questions are still undetermined, and they're not necessarily determined by our state adult education office. There's a lot of factors that go into different pieces of it. And so I think just keeping that in mind, but I know that they are working, and we've worked and given a lot of recommendations on that FAQ going forward. And so we do look for that as we go forward.
Yeah, Patrick, if I can just say real quick.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate, the update and the information. Just to add, and I definitely appreciate Patrick and Bob, sharing a lot of the questions and concerns. We think that the next round of FAQs that we release will really provide some of the more responses. There are still a few, as Patrick had said, that we're still waiting on, but we think we're getting really close. I'll just say our communication now has to get approved by, I think it's the Joint Information Center. The governor's task force is related to COVID-19. So it's been in the queue for approval for close to a week now. So I do understand that people have been waiting. I just ask for a little bit of patience and understanding, because there is more of an approval process with anything that's going out related to COVID-19. But I think the last two pieces that aren't fully addressed in there would be more related to assessments and in the performance. And so I think that those are the things that we'll have some more information on shortly.
Sorry, was having a little technical difficulty there. Thank you, Erica. In terms of funding, more specifically, because we've had a lot of questions about this, and we have discussed this with Erica, really the priority expenditure would be those federal funds, because those are funds that are coming into our state that really can fluctuate depending on, the number of enrollments we have and our performance and those kinds of things. Unless you've been directed differently from our state adult education office, and our office and those members and those folks have been in contact with those programs. So if you haven't heard that from someone in the state adult education office, then it may not pertain to you. They would have reached out to you, but the priority would be for those. I think obviously as we talk about Section 107, it's going to be a priority to try to, expend funds as we can. There will obviously be variances. And so as we go forward, programs will be required, and Erica, you can speak to this as well, but adjustments and modifications of that 10%, we've talked about this last time and in many regional meetings, and your fiscal agents are aware of this as well, that you'll need to document that, and you'll need to note that as a part of uploading your final amendments for Section 107 and on the WIOA side as well. And a part of that will include a 4-question survey that Leo will be sending out in that listserv that Erica was talking about. In addition to the FAQs, there will be that brief survey response. And really that talks, and if you've already completed the template that Mckay sent out, you probably have all the answers already written. That includes general changes in programming, how your delivery of service may have changed during this time, any changes in your intake process, as we know that many programs have said, I've got new participants that want to join. How do I, better assist them and help them? And then the reasons for your budget modification or changes. And at Mckay, we've obviously, advocate that there are going to be some changes based on COVID-19. But really understanding your budget and working with the regional fiscal agent, or if you're in a WIOA situation, really looking at those as well will be really key and important.
Patrick,
Yep.
just a quick comment on the funding piece. And Erica and Patrick and I had a discussion yesterday. It's important. We realize that this is a difficult time, and when you're looking at least Section 107, where we received the $30 million, it's going to be a time when you will probably have some dollars that you'll want to defer to next year. But it's critical, and since we have so many people on the phone, we just need to make the point that it's more important to make sure that I think Erica had told me yesterday, this last year, we had over $5 million that we deferred. That's something that's hard to explain to a legislator, that we need additional dollars for adult ed when we're deferring $5 million of the 30 million to the next year. So we're trying to develop some strategies behind that, but we need to always be aware that that's something that our advocacy committee has to advocate for. You know, we want to advocate for additional dollars, but it's hard to do that when we have legislators coming back and saying, well, you're not spending everything that you have currently, so why do we have to add more money? So we have to be always aware of that. And I know that this year is going to be a little different, but going forward, even to the next year, we need to make sure that what we say we spend in adult ed, we spend in adult ed. So anyway.
I see a couple of questions, Bob, about enrolling new participants. So let me talk about the last bullet point, and then we can address that.
Oh, okay.
This is a good point to do that. Obviously, and we've talked about this, and you should be communicating that with your own fiscal agent within your agency or your regional fiscal agent. We, there is just a general understanding that there will be significant changes, particularly in professional development. You know, at McKay, we were offering our Spring Institute. That's now been canceled. And so we know that many programs may have, we're planning to send staff. So it's now a time for us to think about how do we transition some of those resources, and how can you work with the regional fiscal agent or your fiscal agent at your nonprofit agency to divert those funds into another line item, especially around technology or distance learning resources, professional development. This is where I'll be honest and say, McKay, we really moved quickly to provide some resources for members so that you do have things that you can sign your participants up. Sorry, my dog is running through the house here, so hopefully you can't hear that. Just really communicating with other people and getting ideas on how that can be handled, I think would be really important during this time.
Right. So Patrick, we had a couple questions on enrollment, and how do we enroll anyone who we can't pre-test, and how would we enter that into MERS? And so, how is that enrollment going to work? Another one was, they have a list of people that want to enroll, but how can we do that virtually?
Yes, so great question. So I know that the State Adult Ed Office is working on this as a part of their FAQ. And so I don't know if Erica, if you want to share kind of what that discussion looks like, or I'm happy to as well. I know we've been talking about it for a while.
Yeah, I can just add where we're at right now. And so this is probably one of the pieces that we're still trying to get more clarity around. What I think I've heard on the calls that we've had with our federal office is they are trying to do, they want states to do what they can, as you're mentioning in the FAQ, to support continuation of services where possible. And so that's what we're trying to look at. But one of the things that's been brought up is our assessment policy that currently requires someone to be pre-tested before instruction. We're looking at, we've got the discussion we've had is around the possibility for the next few months to allow programs to provide up to 12 hours of instruction to an individual before pre-testing, which would enable you to at least enroll. I know, being on a number of regional calls, there are some programs that have looked at, whether they're emailing the ALP or scanning it or completing it virtually with students or over the phone. So to at least get that intake information and then emailing things, but the pre-test has been the barrier really to getting them. So we are hopeful that the assessment test vendors are going to be having some options for virtual proctoring of assessments. It sounds like in the conversations that we've had with TABE that they're a little bit farther along than CASAS is, but we're working on some communication that we'll send with those updates as well. So that's really the plan as of right now, how we can try to tackle that. But again, we still don't have those details finalized.
Yeah, and I would just echo what Erica's saying, that I know this is a challenging time, and I would say if you have the ability to bring on someone on, obviously we can't post-test or pre-test them right now, obviously limited availability with the ALP, but if you can enroll them in an electronic and at least get them some hours and help them until we have further guidance, I think that would be the prudent thing to do. I know that's a challenge. I know it's a different way of thinking about things. But I think that's a prudent process to follow as we go forward until we get further guidance and further delineation on what this might shake out to be.
Hey, Patrick.
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, Mike O'Connor. I'd like to jump back a second if it's okay with you. And
Yep, certainly.
$5 million in carryover in Section 107.
Yes.
From what I hear from various school districts, including my own sometime, the business office, you know, the grant, but from the time the grant is submitted in the spring of the previous year until the time it's approved is about 9 months. So it's actually approved. And fiscal agents at school districts have a real problem with that because they're hesitant for us to spend money except for salaries unless the money's been approved. And the amendments go on and on and on. And they come back and things are asked to be amended that weren't originally. And you kind of don't know where you stand for quite a while. And particularly smaller districts, they don't have money to carry over adult education programs. Plus the funding can't be mingled anyhow. So if there was a way to, I think, ensure that the grants were approved sooner, much sooner, more like early fall, or at least by the time the program, our programs we have summer school, so it starts in July, but at least by September or something, so you know for sure your grant is going to be approved. It makes the fiscal agents much less nervous because in K-12 they have a fund balance they can pull from, and a lot of their grants don't go through that same process. I happen to have one through Title 1D for the jail program, and that grant process is not nearly as there aren't so many specific requirements as there is in 107 in terms of writing it or descriptions of items or anything else. And while I'm all for describing it and doing it correctly and so forth, the process just takes way too long for approval. And that's you'll hear that from fiscal agents also, and they'll tell you this of K-12 school districts. It's not how they operate.
You're absolutely right, Mike. And I think as far as the deferred dollars, we talked about it yesterday that we need to get a better handle on all the factors behind why there are deferred dollars so that we can articulate that to our legislator. And we are working with the state office in Sandy Thalen
And the
trying
regional,
to improve the
regional
process
fiscal agents, Bob, too.
of disseminating those grants sooner.
Right.
So I mean, but you're absolutely right. In a number of programs, I think throughout the state offer summer school programs as well, and that they need money behind that. And so they're going into that year in July and August wanting money available to be able to spend for their summer school program. So I think we need to just get a better handle on that so that we can articulate it to the legislator.
Yeah, I plan on starting a very robust summer program July 6th, particularly this year. You know, since students are, they're all hanging out there, they're calling, they're emailing, texting, what's going on now? When can I take my GED test? Blah, blah, blah. They have jobs waiting, all this sort of thing. So I want to run a full one, but I don't know for sure yet what my carryover is going to deferred is going to be, so I can actually start up and know that I have that funding.
Correct. Yep.
It'd be much easier. We could plan and advertise it right now in April, you know, when it's only 2.5 months away to get people involved, because we're going to have to start a whole recruiting effort again. You know, some people have fallen away. They're not used to coming to class anymore. Not everyone is engaging in some of the online instruction that all my instructors are offering. And some don't have the devices at home to be able to do that, to interact with the devices that the teachers are using.
Right.
We have that whole problem. So I can imagine a lot of people will be coming back to the summer. It is very important to have carryover money to be able to know for sure, to tell your budget office at your K-12 district that, yes, we know for sure we're going to have this amount, so this is what we're planning for summer, and this is why we're advertising it right now.
Right.
But you have to have those things in place to get people in here to do that.
Yeah. But what we need to do as an organization is be able to have our members be able to articulate those things.
Yes.
Because to be honest with you, and we've already had a number of questions, we get questions, and Patrick gets questions from the legislator every year on that deferred funds. And I don't think we have done a good job. We need to do a better job at articulating that. So, so let's move on. Just a couple other questions that, Patrick, where can they find that 4-question survey again?
So that will be coming out in the email that includes the frequently asked questions. So I would defer to Erica on specifically when that is coming out. I think they're hoping soon.
Right.
Yeah, if I could say last week, we were hoping it came out. So it's in the queue for approval. We're hoping, I keep checking my email, and wouldn't it be great if it came? So very soon it should be coming out to the program.
Great, thank you, Erica.
And someone else asked, Patrick, does anybody, and we talked about it yesterday with Erica, does anybody have the ALP form online? Are they using it?
So there are a couple of programs, and I think some of them might be on the call today. So I'm sorry to bombard their emails maybe, but Joy Zug at Royal Oak does the electronic ALP through Google Form. And so she has worked very diligently to do that. I know that Charlie Wynn also has a similar format out at Plainwell. And then Heather Robidoux really kind of pioneered that a little bit and has done it through Microsoft Forms. And so I know that they have been using that. This is a question that we brought up as well to the State Adult Ed office. And I know that as I've talked with Sue Johnson, that's something that they're working on to develop, and they were anticipating to possibly have that available for the next program year. I know that with everything going on, that a lot of that work has been derailed, and I know that in some cases Sue herself may be taking on additional roles to help unemployment at this time as well. I'm not sure if Erica, if you're anticipating by July 1, or if you...
Yeah, it probably won't be by July 1 that we would have something to that degree. We're definitely looking at it. I know Brian has reached out, and Sandy, to programs around the state that are doing some really innovative things with it. But we had just had some discussions about going back to thinking of, you know, the intent and purpose of the ALP. So if you remember when it was first developed, I think it was back in like 2004, 2005, it was developed to get that intake information consistently and then use that to enter the information into MARES. And since that time, MARES has gone through a lot of changes. We now have a lot of data match where many of the informational pieces are pulled right from data match, so it doesn't need to be collected from the student. And so trying to really look at how we're using the ALP, and then looking at, we definitely know that, you know, in an electronic form. But what I'll say too, in addition to the electronic form, one of the things that we would like to look at, and I know some programs have already started with this, is that barrier information is really important to collect and to have accurate, so that we're really showing those that we're serving, we're capturing the barriers that they have, because that does go into our federal performance negotiations, and we just want the story of who we're serving to be correct. So I know some of you have modified the intake, so it's not just those boxes of labels that many of us, because we work in these programs, understand, and even still don't even fully understand exactly what's included, but modifying that to be a series of questions that the student would respond to, that then would generate the information as far as whether they have that barrier or not. So I think that we're really intrigued by those and looking at that. So it's encouraging for us that we have a good starting point, because many of you have done so much work in this, but it's not something that I think that we'd have by July 1, what we're looking at doing.
Great, thank you, Erica. I appreciate that you, I don't ever want to speak and you know, say something out of step. So I appreciate that you were able to clarify that for us all. Let's move forward a little bit to talk about, and we're continuing to monitor the chat. I know that we've got a couple of questions, and I hope that we'll be able to address those in a little bit here. Particularly around post-testing and performance. This was the #1 response that we indicated on our survey when we asked what kind of issues you wanted to address in this webinar. And so I really kind of want to go through and try to answer some specific questions about this. So in regards to post-testing, through that FAQ, which was released by the MACAE, the Federal Adult Ed Office, each state really is responsible for outlining if there should be, needs to be, must be any modifications or changes in the assessment policies. I've included a link you'll see at the bottom of a page here at both of these pages of both of the adult ed assessment policies, the current policies, so that you can click on those and see them for yourself. But really, we've been working, and the Adult Ed Office has been working to examine the feasibility of post-testing participants. So at the federal level, they have said that, you know, as programs are able to, they should be going through the post-testing process. In some ways, I think at Mckay, we were a little bit taken aback by that, because, and I think also at this, I can speak for Erica and her staff too, because currently the major test vendors don't have a capacity to do that. And so then there was a little bit of a lag of, okay, well, if we're supposed to do it, but we can't do it, how do we do it? So like Erica said, those major testing vendors are working to develop some virtual proctoring. I think we really need to think about, you know, by the time they roll this out, by the time it's out there, by the time you are able to look at it, by the time your staff is able to be trained, I mean, we need to be realistic that we're looking at May and possibly into June before I really think that we could probably deliver some sort of post-testing virtually. So I think that's just a reality that we have to be aware of. Second to that would be that depending on how long the stay home, stay safe order is, ultimately, most likely that will be a local decision, either at your school district level or nonprofit level, whether or not someone could be able to come in. And that includes your post-testing capabilities, that includes your GED testing centers. I've talked with several districts that their superintendent has said, you know, let's see how things go, possibly in June. Maybe if things are a little bit more clear, we could have you, you know, meaning the adult ed director or the adult ed proctor in the building with limited amount of students coming in just strictly to post-test, keeping in mind all of the health parameters, all of the precautions, the 6 feet, all of that. So I think what we can advise, and what I think is most advisable, is that we don't know the answer to that question yet. And I think most likely it'll ultimately be a local decision. And I think that will be ultimately reflected in the FAQs as well from the State Adult Ed Office, is that, you know, where you can post test and where there's ability to do that equitably, fairly, keeping in health consciously, to be able to do that. I don't anticipate that we're going to be seeing a lot of virtual testing broadly across the state, just by the fact of, you know, I've talked to many of you at the program level that have serious concerns about even getting back participants. And we're aware of that as Mckay as well. You know, we know that participants are fearful, they're scared right now, and do they want to, you know, come back into a setting with additional people? Those are real concerns. So I think there are some possibilities out there. I think we'll need to be creative. I think we'll need to be flexible. I think at the local level, you'll need to communicate that. We are planning to pull together a group of those nonprofit agencies that if they are able to have people come in, what does that look like? That would include WIO-only funded programs, nonprofit agencies. And then I think at the local level, if we can help you have those conversations of what other programs have been having with their district officials and their district agencies to ask questions about what the possibility is of face-to-face or in-person testing, I think that's feasible. Because if you remember, the stay-home order and the school cancellation order does not eliminate totally learning. You know, it says that if there's a one little line in there that says if there is a feasibility and if there's a way to have, you know, people return, including staff, educational staff, that it's a local decision at the district level to make that decision. And so I think we're all trying to work through this, and I know that some of those decisions are out of our hands, really.
So there's a number of questions.
A flurry of questions.
Yeah.
Yes.
So one probably directed for Erica, but will programs be held harmless for performance? Do you have a good feel for that right now, Erica?
Yeah, and I think Patrick had it on one of the slides, I believe, as far as there are no, at the federal level, there are no sanctions for performance for the current year, so program year 2019-20. So we've already communicated, you know, all the states have to our federal office the challenges that we're facing, and so they're very well aware that our performance will be impacted. And the one thing that they've stressed to us, and we would like to stress to our local programs, is where we can, being able to kind of track the impact that the coronavirus has had on our programming. So whether it's students that weren't able to be post-tested, those that, you know, left the program and didn't come back, were ready for high school equivalency testing, but weren't able to take the test because the testing center was closed. So, you know, those sorts of things we'll look at. As far as Section 107, I think there's still discussions around that, how it works in. It is a 3-year average as the fiscal agents look at. It's one of the criteria, and each of them have the ability to weight it, you know, how they see appropriate. And so I think those are still questions to be determined, but we do understand that there will be an impact on performance this year. So I think the best thing that we can do, though, is to get a sense of what that impact was, rather than just saying, yeah, you know, we didn't do well. I think as a state, the last time we looked, our measurable skill gain rate is about 28% right now. Mm-hmm. And last year, I think we were at what, 51, 52%. So yeah, I think we're significantly below where we were in prior years.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Erica, for that.
There's another question, Patrick, going around that the question was, is there anyone in the state still offering GED testing? And then there was a response back that Houghton Lake was still doing that. So I think if that person from Houghton Lake is on the phone, can you clarify how that GED testing is taking place with the stay home, stay safe?
I know that Kim Chinnery, she's from Houghton Lake. Thank you, Kim. She said, we're not doing it during the shutdown period.
Oh, we're not doing it right now.
Mm-hmm. So I know that this has been a big question for a lot of programs. I talked with Ugi Lamar at Ken ISD. You know, he's got 2 testing centers there within his district, and his district has said, you know, what does that feasibility look like going forward? And I know when I talked to him yesterday, he said, you know, we're looking at probably not opening those testing centers up for the rest of the year. That's kind of just the local decision that that's the decision and the discussion. I know Kim Shapansky's on the phone as well. That was as of yesterday, you know, Tuesday, April 7th or April 14th. So by Tuesday, April 21st, it might be different. So I think all I can stress and say is that, you know, we have to be flexible. I think things are still changing and still fluid. We don't know all the information yet. We don't know what the capabilities of there are. I know that the major testing vendors are working on that. And what I would add too is, as we look at the mayors, it's really important that now that we have, kind of, I think, reached a little bit of realizing the longevity of this and the impact it is. We really need to be mindful if there's a capacity. I know some people do have mayor's data that they can still put in. We would encourage you, obviously, to do that. Please try to, keep that information as accurate and up to date as possible. We know that obviously some of you don't have access to it, obviously, because you're at home and it's at the office. But as we go forward, and especially as the stay home is lifted, if you have a capacity to get back in and update that information, but also just to be documenting that. And by documentation, I mean writing that down, that is a challenge, that you aren't able to go in there, and communicating that with us and with the State Adult Education Office would be really helpful throughout this time. If you're able to
Patrick, Patrick, we're fortunate to have Sue Johnson on the phone as well today.
Yes, Sue.
Maybe you could, I know you posted something, Sue, but can you explain that to everybody so they all hear it?
Certainly. Good morning.
Good morning.
Today I sent each regional director all their mayor's data through the end of the third quarter. So they had a comparison from 2016, 17, 18, and then up through third quarter of this year, just so they have a feel of performance for all of their programs through that March 31st deadline.
That's great. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Yeah, and this is the time to do that. I know we're kind of running on time here, so I want to keep us moving, but that's
Patrick,
a great suggestion.
Can I ask, this is Deidre Willis from Detroit Public Schools District.
Detroit.
Can I ask Sue a question?
Sure.
Go ahead.
Who did you send the mayor's data to for Detroit? Did you send it to Brenda Belcher?
I sent it to each regional director. So Jason Evers would have
Jason, okay.
that, and that includes every program. So each program, if they want to get a hold of that regional director, they can do that, or you can reach out to me and I can see what I can get for you.
Okay, I would like to see Detroit.
Okay.
Thank you.
Great, thanks, Sue. And again, I would just reiterate what Erica said. Performance and most of the fiscal agents are aware of this. We talked about it at our last meeting that we had last week, I think it was, Sandy, and then we have one in May, and I think that will happen, and we might have them more frequently. So our regional fiscal agents are monitoring this as well, and that is the power of that regional fiscal agent, and the power of the region is to work together to maintain some stability for programs. And so those are conversations that will probably be had later this spring, over the summer, to ensure that you are secure if you're a Section 107 provider in the allocation that you have in the percentage that's dedicated to performance. So I wanted to kind of move and maybe address some of these particular questions and really give some tasks. I know that during this time, it's very challenging when you get a lot of input and a lot of information coming at you and you don't have a lot of maybe things that are actionable items. And we are actionable people in adult education. We like to just check things off of our lists. And so wanted to put out there some recommendations, some best practices that I've heard from some of our programs that are going through and conducting and look at some of those things. And the second highest issue that came up in the survey for those of you that registered was, beyond the funding and guidance and post-testing, was staff responsibilities during this time. How do we work with staff during this time? How do we lead staff during this time? What roles should staff be having when they're not, don't have face-to-face instruction? So we wanted to give you some recommendations. The first would be that, and we talked about this for a while, that every program should have a written plan for the continuity of learning. That's something that MDE is requiring all districts to do, but we would recommend that every adult, community, and alternative education program has their own for their program. And we have a template for that on our website. Communicating and establishing how you're going to communicate with your staff is really important. I know that some programs have kind of been waiting for more clarity and information, but I think establishing going forward what you're going to do with your staff, whether that includes, I've been helping several programs do Zooms, setting up phone calls, if you're checking in with them, what that looks like so that everyone on your staff is on the same page and is involved and has the same updates at the same time, here's the same information, is really key. Other suggestions that programs are doing that I think are good things to share would be, we're moving on into an online setting for right now. And so we might have to maximize some of those resources and materials. So making a shared calendar so that when the other staff are working on different projects, when they're contacting students, when they are having classes, so that other teachers can maybe listen in on another class and take ideas and go forward. I think it's important to do that. Sharing documents during this time might be important so that all staff have one place that they can come back and look at and know where the information is. This is also a good time to really check in with staff members and try to conduct one-on-one communications. If you're a teacher or instructional staff and you have questions, I think you should reach out to your director and try to set up a one-on-one conversation with them. Same thing with directors. Reach out, to your staff individually and see what needs they might have so that everyone's on the same page and knows what needs to be done. Really looking at realigning resources. This is a challenging time, but communicate what needs do staff have for funding? What tools or resources do they need? Are there things, are licenses out there for different products that they have always wanted to try that now that you have some funding that's freed up, that you could shift that to and that you can invest in for your staff and for them to utilize, relatively easily and seamlessly. Thinking more broadly, involving staff in strategic planning, I think is going to be really important. At some point we have to return back to thinking about the future and thinking about program growth. This is a time, we've got a lot of time at home where we're sitting and thinking about lots of things. Have them brainstorm, send a couple of questions out. And I have a template that I'll be uploading to our McKay website about, things that you can ask of staff as they envision planning for the future. Also consider or think about, and this obviously is very dependent and localized, what is the capacity for reopening? What does that look like? Does that look like a capacity to have some staff be able to return in June? Does it what does that look like in July? What are some contingencies that you might have in place? Does that look like just staff coming in? If you were planning to do summer programming, what might that look like? Begin to think about what some of those conversations might look like, especially with your local leaders, and really start to plan about that, because we do want to be able to shift into the next program year and have a solid plan going forward, or at least have some forethought into considerations of changes in programming. And I would say the last two pieces are really important just for self-care, monitoring your own self-care if you're a program administrator, but also staff, and reaching out to your staff. This is a challenging time. Many of us have family members that are, far away or that are ill or sick themselves. And so I think just really going through and keeping them at the forefront will be really important. And then observing regular work hours. It's so easy, and I'm very guilty of it, to slip into, just one more email on the weekend and looking at one more thing, but really keeping set hours like you normally would will help us to maintain our social and emotional health as we continue forward.
Patrick?
So
Go ahead, Tammy.
yeah,
I'm sorry, really quickly on the line of what you could do with your staff, which maybe you're going into in this one and I don't know it. What I've been doing is sending like Google survey check-ins to my teachers. One around like what percentage of their students are actually engaged regularly, like over 50% of the time. Which formats are they using to interact with their students? If they're not engaged, what are the barriers to engagement? Just so that we have some data for our narrative to explain why maybe if we can get post-testing done, why maybe they're not as successful, what are successes, what's worked, what hasn't worked. So I would maybe Google surveys or Survey Monkeys, whatever, are really quick and easy. Throw it out to your teachers just to get an idea of what percentage are doing what in case the state ever asks for that, or we need it for our narratives, even if we owe narratives in the fall.
That's great.
That's good.
I do want to say, I know that it is 10 o'clock here. We just have a couple of more items that we wanted to share. So I do want to be mindful of everyone's time. We understand if you do have to leave, but we will hopefully wrap up here in about the next 5 or 10 minutes. In terms of going off of what Tammy was sharing, thank you for sharing that, about best practices for staffing. One of the things was, what are additional things that we should think about when we're considering staffing and assignments and responsibilities for staff during this time? This is a great time for staff to really dedicate to reaching out to participants. This can be a part of your follow-up process. This can be a part of checking in with your participant mental health well-being, checking in and making sure participants are completing things. I know that's a different role than what staff may be used to, but it's all a part of giving them some responsibility in this entire process. So it's not just on one person, and they're really connecting and keeping those participants engaged. So hopefully when we can return to face-to-face setting, they'll be there for us. Looking at other curriculum resources or vendors or products, I mentioned that before. Some programs have created lead instructors where they're asking their staff to meet together and plan and share what they're doing, so that they can share best practices. Creating a list, either at a class level or program level, of participants and needs that they might have. And that could include needs that are not educational needs. Maybe they're looking for food assistance. Maybe they're looking for internet assistance. All of those pieces that your staff could, now that they have a little more time and flexibility, could be able to dedicate to addressing some of those needs for participants. Again, thinking more strategically is in long term about your intake process. Maybe there are changes that you could, happen there. When we talked about the electronic ALP, maybe that's something that you're looking to just look at and see what that process looks like. If there's changes in your digital learning or distance learning mechanism that you've encountered that now you feel you want to institute as an actual long-term change in your programming. Maybe you want to look at that, your policies, your handbook. All of those things are projects that can be worked on right now. And ultimately, and the caveat through all of this is we know that this is challenging. We're all being asked to do different things and facing different challenges. But I think it's okay to ask staff and to work with them on how to use virtual technology. We're all familiarizing ourselves with it, and just putting that out there to let everyone know that we're all in this together. We're all trying to figure it out. We all did our first Zoom where our nose was in the camera, and now we realize we have to sit back, and all that I think is important. Following up with students and then keeping that structure in a structured class setting with students or regular class. One program, they said, my students don't have virtual, but they have phones. So I'm going to do a conference call line, and we're going to do a class on a conference call line. Options, just different things that I know people are doing to get through this time. This is our last piece here, and this is kind of a 180 a little bit from what we've been talking about, but Bob, I'll let you kind of share this a little bit and talk about this.
Right. So we continue to have conversation with our advocacy committee. It's critical for us, especially with the unknowns of the upcoming budget and where we're going to be, that we continue to communicate with our lawmakers and our superintendents and our mayors of the importance of adult ed and keeping that funding level stable. So we have crafted, so it's critical for us to, and COABE has done a good job, and you receive everything from COABE on letters and advocating for adult ed that they've been doing on a federal level. We felt it important that we do it on a state level as well. So, we're recommending that we continue funding for adult ed in Michigan at $30 million and the $13 million for WIOA. So we've put together, the advocacy committee has drafted a sample letter that you will be receiving today that we would like you to take a look at.
Tomorrow, Bob.
Oh, tomorrow, I'm sorry, tomorrow.
Oh, I'm sorry, I put the wrong date. Yeah, tomorrow.
Tomorrow. So that's going out tomorrow, and we encourage you to take a look at that letter and you can make any changes that you wish to that letter, and then we would like you to send that to your representatives in state government, as well as your local superintendents and any other staff that you, or any other policymakers that you think would be important to send it to encourage them. The letter is really pretty much encouraging them to think about adult ed and the importance of adult ed and what that means to the state, especially during this time, this crisis here in Michigan. And we all know that back in 2008, when we had the financial crisis before, we had an influx of students attending adult ed programs to better their skills. We can see that happening again as the economic downturn from this pandemic. So it would be important for us to make sure that we stay connected. Also, you know, the federal government has come out with, I think Michigan is going to get about $89 million in stimulus dollars to use towards education. So we're going to come out with another letter in the next 2 weeks or so that we would like you to send out that would encourage them to use some of that money that Michigan gets for adult ed, to at least keep adult ed in their minds as well. So it's just important for us to stay connected with our legislator, and it's an easier time now because they're free. They're not going to Lansing. They're not in committee meetings. They're there, so you can email them as well. And I think, Patrick, I think you're going to be sending out along with that letter how they can email their representative. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Yep. You're going to have a piece. So hopefully it'll be easy for you. Take that letter, download it, and make any changes that you want that are appropriate for your community, and send that out for us. That would be great.
I think we've addressed most of the questions. If there's any more, we would just ask at this time to put in the chat, and we can try to wrap up here. But I would just want to say thank you to everyone. I know this is challenging times, but I've been inspired by what people are doing. We've really kind of, pull ourselves up and said, okay, how do we move best and go forward? And we're all trying to work together from the State Adult Education Office on down to really make this system work, especially now, and work in this with all the challenges that we do, and keeping our participants at the forefront of all of this. So I appreciate everyone for all the work that they're doing. Obviously, reach out to us. I want to thank our board of directors too for their hard work. They go above and beyond in addition to the programming that they do at their programming. So many of them are involved in our professional development and pulling those together for all of you. So we appreciate all that they do.
I'd also like to thank Erica and Sue Johnson and the state office staff for joining us today, and for their open communication with us throughout this crisis in Michigan. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you always being accessible for us to try to answer the questions and to help us get through this unprecedented time in our country, really, in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I just want to thank, Bob and Patrick especially, and just all of McKay. We appreciate the communication, absolutely sharing your concerns. I absolutely want to echo Patrick's comments about thanking all of the directors in the field, because we know that you have done your best to be innovative and to try new things and tirelessly without, a lot of guidance and responses, and, doing your best to try and keep your students engaged. And we're going to do our best to support you. So I just want to thank everyone for your understanding and patience as we kind of work our way through this and do what's best for our students and our programs. So thank you to everyone, and for including us in the conversation.
And please follow through by sending that letter out to your lawmakers. It really does help, and it keeps us connected with them as well, and they see the importance of adult ed and what you are doing in your community to keep your students engaged. So it's critical for us to be able to do that. So I encourage you. And if you're free on Friday at 1 o'clock, join a committee and talk. It'd be great.
Great.
Hey, Patrick,
Yep.
really quick, Melanie put on here that there's a high school equivalency GED teachers group on Facebook.
Yes.
Send out that the PowerPoint. Can you share that link to that? I can forward to my teachers because I didn't know anything about that.
Yes. Yep. I think
A lot of GED questions that I can't answer.
no, that's great. Yeah, we will send all of this. Give me a couple hours here to put it on our website, and we'll send the link out and the link of the recording and all of that information as well. Obviously, reach out to us. You see the contact information for Bob, Judy, and I. However we can assist you, we're happy to do so. So hope everyone has a great day, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.